Well, hello all. I am planning to use this tree as part of a shelter that I'm going to build. So what I do is I'm going to cut this tree there just about a third of the way through, and then I'm going to bend it over and it's going to form part of the lean on the shelter. Let's just show you. So now we're just going to pull it over. So now I'm looking for a piece of string. And I'm going to tie this like together here. So there I have sort of the front entrance of an A-frame shelter, and now I just have to put branches against it like this. So you can see quite quickly it's coming together, and let's just show you from within. You see very quickly we've created an area in which we can sleep. It all comes together at the top, and now we're going to do the same on this side. And so we're going to, these are our two supporting trees. I'm always in favor of leaving the tree in place because it just saves you having to worry about it slipping. Always cut on the far side of the tree and bend it over. These Port Jacksons don't snap, they're not brittle. This one can definitely bend over. So with almost no effort, we now have bent, 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 bent. We can bend that one, bent, 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 and we have a whole shelter coming into play here. In just minutes, we've now created a whole shelter. What a beauty he is. Probably some sort of orb spider. Not more than 10 meters, 5 meters from my shelter. So we'll leave him alone. He'll do his bit for nature. So here is my shelter. Let's start adding branches. I'm going to put the heavy ends on the bottom because I don't want the top too heavy. So, in under an hour, we are a long way towards completing our shelter. Let's just show you what it's beginning to look like inside. Branches leaning in. We've got a few sides still to cover. So here is our shelter from the bottom to the top. On the side we've covered. Let's cover all the sides now. Well, this is all alien vegetation and Port Jackson, which I would be cutting down anyway. And about 6 months ago I thought, seeing as I'm cutting it down, why not build stealth shelters with it? So let's just build up this wall with, it's basically blue gum and Port Jackson, which are alien species, and we're trying to get rid of them. So there's a beautiful enclosed, this all comes together at the top. Enclosed, enclosed, enclosed. Just look, this huge area, you could sleep 5 people. Here it's almost level, beautiful. So the stealth shelter is looking fantastic. Well, hello all. There is our completed shelter and we're all ready to stealth camp here for the night. It's going to be wonderful. Look how nice our shelter looks. And tonight we're going to sleep in a plastic bag. Well, call it the poor man's bivvy bag. But I've always wanted to sleep in a bivvy bag. And I want to try this out, especially when it rains. But here's the problem. Where I live, it only rains in winter. So we haven't been able to do any rainy stealth camping, but rain is on the way, they say. We live in hope. So let's have a look at our stealth shelter for the night. So this is lovely and big, looks pretty nice inside here. We're looking for a flat spot. Bit of a hole here. Let's fill that in. So here looks nice. So we've got our ground sheet, flask of tea, cup, wine, gas stove, bivvy bag. So this used to be a bag from a mattress, a big mattress. Let's put our ground sheet inside. Sleeping bag. There we go. Well, for supper tonight, I brought a jaffle iron and a little gas stove. So let's make some snackwitches or jaffle sandwiches, whatever they call them. So there we go. And although it says chutney, don't let it fool you. This is actually some sweet wine. A rosé. Did you see how little time that took us? We got supper on the fire. Well, you can call it fire. We got our drinks going. It's nearly sunset. Hoping to see a few satellites when it gets dark. There's a patch of clear sky here. We are in a bit of a forest. Maybe I can show you around. So here is our jaffle iron with a sandwich already made. Let's turn it over. Here is the inside of our stealth camp. Looks pretty cozy to me. Here's the door, and it goes pretty well enclosed and camouflaged. Here is our bed. We also brought 2 pillows, which I must just blow up. So they go there, and then it goes further around. And then we come back to our jaffle iron, and there's the tripod. Let's put our camera back on the tripod. So this should be pretty nice. We like to think we are civilized around here, so we did bring a paper plate. We have a second jaffle or sandwich, which we're going to put on once our first one is done. It's a bit hot around here, so let's take this off. You can see that's beginning to steam. I see there's some cheese beginning to drip out of it. Looks like a good sign, I hope. I'm not sure if it was the Romans who always liked to eat lying down. I guess I must be a Roman at heart. Now, I'm not an expert at this. I vaguely think I've done this before. Like I say, I see some cheese beginning to drip out. So, yeah. I'm just going to see if I can bring the camera closer. Yeah. Like I say, I'm a bit of a novice at this, so let's see how it goes. So we open this. Look at that. Look how nice that looks. There's our first jaffle sandwich. Let's put in the second one. Obviously, I'm going to keep the first one in the jaffle iron because it was easier to carry it here. And there we go. So, yum yum. Now, if there's one food that I could live on for the rest of my life, if I was forced to choose a food, it would be this snack, which cheese, tomato, and onion on brown bread. I'm such a big fan. So this would be my favorite food. I think it's almost a complete food. You got your dairy products that gives you your fats and protein. That's the cheese. You got your brown bread that gives you your carbohydrates, your vitamin B, onions and tomato. Pretty complete. I reckon I could live months on this. So, I want to see what it's like sleeping here in a bivvy bag. It feels great. We've got our little pillows. This is going to be great. I want to see how warm it is in here. So we're all ready for bed. Now, stealth camping is a wonderful little day holiday, but it also has a serious and spiritual side. But I couldn't illustrate that. I thought it'd be better to do it on the green screen. So please have a look at this section that follows. There is a genre in movies called the unflinching walk, where you walk away from an explosion, normally caused by you, and you do so without even looking back. It's cool to be able to do that. It just shows, explosions are such a part of your everyday life that you don't even bother to look back when it happens. Now, I'm wondering where this genre began, and I can give one suggestion. There was a character in the Old Testament called Lot, and he was told by God when Sodom was about to have fire rain down upon it to leave and to not look back. And two angels were sent to his house to drag him away from this impending disaster because he was dilling and dallying, and yeah, they couldn't persuade the sons-in-law to come with them. So eventually Lot, his wife, and his two daughters were dragged out by these two angels who were about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah in the morning. And then, because they were told not to look behind them, his wife, who apparently, what is looking behind you? It symbolizes you want to go back. You're missing, you're kind of against this whole process. You're not grateful for being saved from disaster. So Lot's wife looked back and she turned into a pillar of salt. And then they were told to go into the mountains, but Lot was still arguing. He said, can't I go to this little city called Zoar? And the angel spared Zoar and allowed Lot to go there. Then Lot arrived there and he saw they were just as wicked as Sodom and Gomorrah. So then he eventually went to the mountains and started living in a cave there. So is that where the unflinching walk away from disaster started? There are other scriptures sort of in the New Testament which it says any man putting his hand to the plow and looking back is not fit for the kingdom. So that's in Luke chapter 9. It's a suggestion that once you become a Christian, you're committed to becoming a Christian, and then you look back, sort of longing for your old life, thinking about it, or thinking of returning to it, then you got serious problems. So, I talk a lot about materialism because I think it's got a lot to do with stealth camping. Because when you go stealth camping, you basically take nothing with you. You're just going there, you take the minimal amount of stuff, you go and hide in the bush, and we never really talk about what are we running away from. I generally do it just because it's like a little holiday, it's a wonderful break, but it's also practice for some event which we are told that's going to occur in the end time. If you look at Matthew 24, we're told there's going to be something called the abomination that makes desolate, that's going to be set up in Jerusalem. It's probably going to be some sort of huge image or something that has religious significance. And we're told that you can see it from the rooftop or from the field, not from inside the house, not watching your TV. So when you see this abomination that makes desolate from Jerusalem, somewhere in Jerusalem, being set up, and you're sitting on your rooftop or in the field, and you see this thing being erected, you're told to go and flee and not even return to your house. So think about it. They say that if you go into your house, he that tries to save his life by going into his house, getting some prepper things, getting food, tents, whatever, is going to lose his life. And he who will lose his life will save his life. So imagine that, being told not to even go back into the house if you're in the rooftop or the field. I mean, what if your family, your dog, your possessions, your ID card, everything, you're just told to leave that more or less behind? There is another scripture in Luke 9 where Christ calls somebody to follow him, and the person says, can't I go and bury my father? And he says, let the dead bury their dead, meaning the spiritually dead. Let them go and bury the father. That meant live with the father until he dies. That could be a years and years process, because this is an old man. It's not like he had died already. And then there's another person who got called by Christ and the person said, can't I go and bid my family goodbye? And in this case, Christ says to them, I think it is, he says, any man having put his hand to the plow and looking back is not fit for the kingdom. So the guy has decided he wants to follow, but now he's thinking, oh, I've got all these material concerns. And what about people who were told by Christ to become like literal followers of him, to go sell all you have and come follow me? Wow, can you imagine that? That is extreme. Go sell all you have, give to the poor, and come follow me. That's like you burning your bridges. There's no looking back from that. That is a definite commitment.
And you can see that many of the disciples, when called, just left their boats and followed Christ. They left their business, they left everything and followed Christ. So we have to ask ourselves, is Christianity this materialistic, concerned thing, or is Christianity about a heavenly kingdom, a future kingdom, a better kingdom, and the concerns of this life? We are so often told, take no anxious thought for the morrow. Don't worry about what you're going to be clothed in. You know, God clothes the birds. Look at the flowers, they clothe better than Solomon. And take no anxious thought for the morrow. Let the morrow take thought for the things of itself. It is a religion that is really anti caring for what the morrow will bring. It's not a concern. If you look at all the disciples and Christ was basically, he said, the foxes have homes, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. He's basically talking about living a homeless lifestyle, being a hobo for the 3.5 years of his ministry. And so were the people who'd forsaken everything and followed him. It's not like you have to sell your house. It's basically just to have a mindset that is not concerned that you've got to go back every now and then, not concerned with the materialism aspect of your life. You've got to be able to walk away from it. So it's this unflinching walk away from materialism, which I'm thinking of. And stealth camping, I think, helps teach us that. If we can, for a weekend or a day or a night, walk away from everything, go and live, feel self-contained, feel that our life is not under threat, we can do this, we can live and survive quite happily for a while, then I think it is leading us in the right direction of the unflinching walk away from materialism. So all the disciples gave up everything. Paul gave up everything. Christ gave up everything. You do not find any person in the New Testament, any person of note, who is the giving up everything is not important. It's the being prepared to do without it, being prepared to give it up, whether you give it up or not. Most of them, when they walked around with Christ, were basically homeless hobos, you would have regarded them as. And Paul was basically traveling on trips abroad. He worked as a tent maker, but sometimes he was supported. And then a lot of the end of his life, he was basically jailed. So you don't really find wealthy people following Christ. You find Nicodemus and I think Joseph of Arimathea were wealthy, and there was a woman, I think, named Lydia, and there were various others who were fairly wealthy who kind of, when they arrived, would support them. Martha would take Christ in and look after him, and Mary, Martha, and Lazarus in Bethany. But you can see that the whole Christian movement was anti-materialistic. And when the day of Pentecost arrived and there were people from overseas in Jerusalem and the Holy Spirit fell on them and the church was forming, many people sold everything they had just to support this growing Christian movement. They thought nothing of selling their lands and whatever, just to keep the people who were living in Jerusalem, to keep them, support them. So this is a thought that stealth camping helps us to become anti-materialistic. Now, mammon is worth serving in a sense, because if you don't have something to replace it with, what else is there to serve? Mammon. Get a lovely, wealthy lifestyle. Have cars and rich houses and trophy wife and a trophy house and all these cars to impress people and fame and fortune. What else is there to do? But if there is a better kingdom, if you are a citizen of you would say, a better kingdom, then all these things should be meaningless. They should not take and occupy a central part in our mind. So there's no point in being anti-materialistic if you're not God-centric and looking at the goodness of God and focused on the goodness of God. Now you could say, and I thought about this, how does this God-centric approach affect your everyday life? And I think it's in everything. In everything we do, we can either, you can see when people have put materialism first. They can't give something away. They might have a house full of stuff they're not using, but they can't give it away because even though it's been sitting in the cupboard for 20 years, they're still attached to it. And a poor person who comes around and could use it, they can't part with it. And, they may be hoarding stuff, or they may just, if they're going to move somewhere, they must put it all in a container and take it with them. They cannot get rid of it or part with it. You see that, as I say, just in when people move, that certain things they just cannot part with. And it is a kind of materialism. It's a hoarding. It's a mentality that traps you, because I think we should preferably be light. And we need to be light because there is going to come a time when Mr. 666 is going to want to impose upon us this mark of the beast, and we're going to have to fall down and probably worship that image that's been erected in Jerusalem. When the band plays wherever you are, in whichever country it's controlled by the beast, you're going to have to fall down and worship. And if you fall down and worship, fine, you'll have access to resources you'll be able to buy and sell. But if you refuse to, which many Christians in the early Roman Empire refused to and were thrown to the lions or burnt alive or whatever, a similar thing is coming in the end time, whereby we're going to prove our allegiance to the beast by taking this mark and being prepared to fall down and worship him or the image every time probably a band, a certain tune strikes up, just to show that we have allegiance to Mr. 666. And those who don't, their only choice is they're going to have to flee to the hills. As Matthew 24 says, though, him who's on the hill, on the rooftop or in the fields, let him flee to the mountains. And if you look at Hebrews 11, it talks about how at the end of the chapter, though the people were in the hills, they were persecuted, they were without clothes, the world wasn't worthy of them, they hid in the caves and dens, which means in the caves and crevices, away from where the authorities, the man, has control over them to enforce the 666. So in the end time, there is going to be a definite test of materialism. And we see that also in Christ's message to the churches, where the Laodicean church is told that they think they're rich and increased with goods and they have need of nothing. And this is the second last church. So if it was historically, if these churches were historical, the Laodicean church is going to be around in the end time. And this is the thing, materialism is like a god, because you can solve all your problems with materialism. You get cancer, yeah, we just go for an operation. Who needs God? We all our needs are taken care of. Food, we can buy friends, we can always, if we're lonely, we can just splurge money around. We'll have hordes of people around. All our needs, mammon is a very good substitute for God. So if one is not going to put in God, one might as well hold in mammon. Mammon is, one can only say that if you're going to get rid of mammon, you have to then put your focus on God. And I'm not necessarily saying that everyone has to get rid of their stuff. I'm saying, are we prepared to unflinchingly just take a match, throw it behind us, and have everything exploding, and all hell is breaking loose behind us, our house is burning down, our possessions we've left behind, we're fleeing to the mountains? That's the attitude I think that we have to have, is the attitude of being prepared to walk away from all our worldly stuff and being prepared to put our trust that we're going to be stealth camping in the wilderness, away from the authorities, away from Mr. 666. Now, do I personally think that I'm going to have to do this? I doubt it. I am 68. I'm probably too old. I doubt the end time's going to come within my lifetime. The Bible, the good book, I think Psalm 91 or one of those Psalms says that 70 years are appointed to a man, and by that scale I've got 2 more years to go. That's our lifespan, is 70 years. And it doesn't look like the world is extreme enough that it's the end time. I would know it's the end time when 1/4 of the earth dies, according to the 5th seal of Revelation and the 4th horse of the Apocalypse of Matthew 24, where 1/4 of the world dies. And after that comes the 5th seal, which is the Great Tribulation. And we haven't seen the persecution of Christians, which comes after 1/4 of the world dies. And although I'm just a prophecy hobbyist, this is how I see it's all going to go down. We're going to see the image of the beast set up. We're going to have to flee. And then there's going to be a huge persecution of Christians. And after that is going to come heavenly signs and the rapture. So I guess if you have to categorize myself, I'm a post-tribulation rapturist. I believe we've got to go through the tribulation. I have no clue how long we've got to be hiding on the mountains. But we have got to initially flee from Mr. 666 and refuse the mark of the beast. We're not going to be raptured before that decision. If you think you are, well, great, then you've got nothing to worry about. I feel we've got to those who are in Jerusalem have to flee from Jerusalem to the mountains. Those in the rest of the world under influence of Mr. 666 are going to have to go flee from the local authorities, head to the mountains, head to the caves, head to your bug out place, and you're going to have to survive. I have no clue how long it is. Maybe it's a couple of years. And then at the end of the Great Tribulation, which is the persecution of the saints, and anyone who doesn't receive this mark, if you receive the mark, you can buy and sell. If you don't receive the mark, you're either going to become killed or enslaved. It's not going to go well with you. But if you do accept the mark, you're going to be rejected by Christ. So at the end of this Great Tribulation, we see the heavenly signs, which is the 6th seal. And then Christ comes and raptures us and takes us away from the earth. And then we have the wrath of Christ, or the Lamb. And that is the 7 trumpet and 7 vial plagues. So though we don't suffer the wrath of Christ if we refuse to accept the mark of the beast. That's my, as I say, I'm just a prophecy hobbyist. You probably have your own opinions, but that is how it's going to go down. But if you were living and you really believe this is the end time, there is going to come a time when you're going to have to flee from Mr. 666, or you're going to have to accept the mark of the beast. So, I'm practicing for the choice, even though I doubt it'll come in my lifetime, of being able to just, whatever they call it, the walk away, where you unflinching walk away from materialism and from what Mr. 666 has to offer and everything in this world in favor of a better kingdom.